Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. This writer's analysis is my Deltarune follow-up to my previous Undertale video, which, if you haven't seen that already, I highly encourage that you do that because it's really good. I had a ton of fun making it, and it will also provide some foundational understanding for where I am going with this particular video. Also, fair warning, spoilers ahead for the game Deltarune. So moving on, with this particular video about the game Deltarune, I hope to complete my goals of understanding these two games in terms of their writing, their meaning, as well as deliver my own theory for where Deltarune is going overall narratively and how it is connected with Undertale. So buckle up for a crazy ride because I believe that I know what the Dark World really is and what the story is that Deltarune aspires to tell. So starting off with the writing. If Undertale is a game that is all about embodying the experience of the fan, fully immersing the players in a story where their actions and determination are a reflection of themselves and their choices, Deltarune is the dark reflection to that idea. The game begins with a selection process that makes you feel like you're going to have even greater autonomy than what you had in Undertale. However, your choices are immediately rejected, and you are told that no one can decide who they are in this new world. And if you cannot determine who you are, then all semblance of freedom and that determination that characterized us before has just been chucked out the second story window. Deltarune's tale of Kris, the school bully Susie, and the Darkner Prince Ralsei is an interesting one. Though in all honesty, it's a bit hard to pin down an exact central story at this point in time, and granted that's probably because we're only one chapter into the game. Ralsei wants Kris and Susie's help to save the Darkner's world and bring about the downfall of Angel's Heaven. Susie, on the other hand, just wants to escape this dumb world, and Kris, well, I'll save Kris's motives for a little bit later. But three different stories get wrapped up in a curious, sometimes funny, sometimes bizarre, and sometimes spooky quest to defeat the evil king, named King. Yes, that's his name. For anyone who has played Dungeons & Dragons before, this will feel like a very similar start to just about any campaign out there. Multiple people with diverse backgrounds and motives are forced to work together and complete a quest to achieve their individual aims and goals. There's nothing too incredible or earth-shattering about this approach. What is impressive, however, is how Susie rises to become the hero by the end of the first chapter, when she steps in to save Kris from King. What is also interesting is when we see that Ralsei's identity is none other than Ezreal, Kris's older brother. Now, you might have easily have guessed that from beforehand, but still, it's a pretty neat twist. Now, this is where most gamers and theorists begin unpacking Kris's quest and mental state. But wait! We're not quite there yet. You see, once the dynamic trio has beaten King, with some small aid from his funny yet misguided son Lancer, Kris and Susie finally return to the Lightner world, the real world, as it were. The not-so-shocking reveal is then given that everything that we've been playing through up until this point has taken place in a game room. From there, Susie and Kris seal their new-founded friendship. Susie asks Kris if they can return the next day, and now the rest of the chapters to this tale are set into motion. From there, you can explore the rest of the town and see the rest of the monsters who are out and about, and you will immediately recognize many of them from Undertale, though a lot of them are pretty different, and that's because, well, we are in a very different world, and a very different timeline after all. And if you go looking about, if you poke into every single nook and cranny that you can, you will find all sorts of neat information and tidbits about the lives of Kris and the Dreamer family. And all of this ends with Kris pulling their best Char impersonation and ripping the player's soul right out of their chest and flinging it into a rusted cage. Why? Well, because your choices don't matter. Or do they? I'll get to that soon enough. Honestly, though, Deltarune's first chapter feels more like a simple story with a few emotional beats and some strange twists along the way. But really not much more than that. And with us unable to say when Toby Fox will be able to finish his game in its entirety and release it to us, we are kind of left to twiddle our thumbs and theorize. But I believe that hidden within Deltarune is a much greater story, and the genius epoch that Toby is crafting. An epic of timelines, worlds, magic, angels, and big game players all colliding to determine the fate of the characters that we've come to love. And it all starts with the first underlying theme of Deltarune, that your choices don't matter. In Undertale, we are given full autonomy. We could determine the outcome of the entire story and its rich cast of characters. We explore the themes and the possibilities that we wanted, according to what resonated with us the most. But in Deltarune, this is not the case. Instead, Deltarune takes us through the experience, not of the gamer, nor the reader, the fan, or whoever, but instead we are pulled into the process of the creator. This is the game's core purpose and meaning. I arrived at this conclusion for a number of reasons. First, we need to remember Toby's own words when he said that he felt that he could not make a game like Undertale that would make us feel like that again. Also, he wanted to take his players through the process of making a game itself, through the construction and themes of Deltarune. And so there we have it, straight from the horse's mouth. But we also get a fun meta moment where Kris gets to see an annoying dog hard at work in front of a computer in the library. And furthermore, when we have the revelation of what's really been happening with Kris and Susie, that they've been in the game room for all this time, we are given insight into the fact that Kris has been kind of building this whole story on the go. And it gives us this really neat understanding of what's been going on, that this is still, once again, this is the creation of not only just a game, but of a narrative. So we have all this in-game evidence to support Toby's word. But there is still a little more. We know that Deltarune is meant to be a massive game. A massive game where our choices, quite frankly, don't matter. Toby Fox is at the helm, steering the entire narrative towards an important conclusion. One that he feels will give us another feeling. One that is comparable to our experience with Undertale, but is still its own thing. When I think about this, my mind wanders to other stories that have given me a good emotional sucker punch and that have also deeply influenced me. Stories such as The Lord of the Rings, Mistborn, Beyonders, and the Stormlight Archive all readily come to mind. These are tales that have resonated with me on a personal and deeply emotional level. And as a fan, there are times where I would have done my hardest to try to change certain points along the way because, man, I really wanted either these characters to end up together, or I really wanted to explore more of this particular theme, or I really hated that particular dude and I wanted him to die a quicker and more painful death. But, you know what? If I had done any of that, I would have ended up destroying the narrative. Instead, because I wasn't allowed to influence what those stories had going on in them, I was given something amazing and personal in the culmination and finale of each series. Deltarune is meant to be the same way. Toby Fox is steering the entire story of Deltarune to a powerful climax that will give us something new and meaningful. And there is something in that idea that all writers should bear in mind. And it is this: that it's your story that you're telling. It's not your fan's story. It's not someone else's story. It's your tale. And while it is fun and good to bring others in and have them get involved, receive good feedback, you should never change your story on a whim just to please other people. That totally cheapens the experience of creating this story. And so that leads me then to ask the question, so what is the amazing ending that Toby Fox is creating? The one that he is not letting us influence through our determination. Well, that is where my insane, but if it is true, then this could be the coolest thing since sliced bread or Dalinar rejecting odium theory comes in. And I honestly mean that. Now remember, a theory is a prediction of what might come up and what will be revealed to us. It is not engraved in stone. As such, my theory is only as valid as so many others out there. However, I am confident in the claims I'm about to make because from a storyteller's perspective, if they are true, they will greatly enhance the overall quality of Toby's themes and message, as well as making the gameplay and the expansive world way more engaging and cool. But it will also provide much needed answers to the deeper lore of Undertale and still ultimately deliver that beautiful, sweet, emotional sucker punch of an ending that we all know is coming and that we all know we want. My theory is simply this. Unlike what many people think, and even what the game currently leads you to believe, the Dark World is real. If this claim of mine proves to be true, that the Dark World is real, this will have a massive impact on what will occur later on in the game. And it is the foundation of all my following predictions. And they are as follows. Prediction number 1. The Dark World will continue to expand and grow through the 7 chapters of Deltarune. We know that the Mysterious Knight is opening more dark fountains, which is setting up some real problems for both Darkners and Lightners. One of the mysteries that the game will have to solve is how Ezreal and Kris stumbled upon the Dark World in the first place and entered through the Dark Fountain, because as far as we can tell, these fountains are the conduits between the two worlds. The answer to that moment in the past lies in both Kris and Susie returning to the toy room and continuing their adventure with Ralsei to purify and close all the new dark fountains which the knight has created. I think that in Chapter 2, once the gang has purified and closed another fountain, they will come out of it in another place in the town entirely. Could very well be in the library, or maybe out in the graveyard, who knows? But Kris and Susie will wonder how they even got there in the first place, thinking that they must have just been so caught up in the game that they lost track of time and what they were doing. But for us as the players, it will be a crucial clue that the Dark World is indeed real and that it is expanding. The Dark World is Deltarune's magic system, just as pure game mechanics and abilities and determination were the foundation of Undertale's fantastic magical system. My second prediction is this. With the expansion of the Dark World, we are going to learn much more about the town's characters, but especially our dynamic trio. One thing that we can postulate very easily from what many others have thankfully pieced together, and even from the story itself as far as Chapter 1 has told us, is that, well, we are going to learn still a lot more about Kris, and this is coming into some of Kris's motivations and the likes. We see that Kris is dealing with isolation. We see that Kris is dealing with the absence of Ezreal. Ezreal is that powerful, good, guiding older brother who is now off, and this introduces a lot of uncertainty and even depression into Kris's life. And so we get to see that mirrored really well in the Dark World, and we also get to see Kris's conflict with Susie played out, and I think it's especially telling that King directly quotes Susie from earlier when he says that quiet people piss him off. And since Susie is a Lightner and she is sharing in this Dark World experience with Kris, it is very likely that we'll learn a lot more about her from what we see unfold in the Dark World, because the Dark World will begin to reflect her own problems and her own background. I would also not rule out the possibility that our future enemies will resemble people from the town itself. One that I'm quite certain that we'll see is Noelle's mother, that she will be the nefarious queen that we've been given reference to. And I say that in part because, well, we know that she's the mayor of the town, and it's implied that she and Kris or I should say that she and the Dreamer family have some sort of bad blood between them. And so I'm pretty confident in my claim that we're going to see her show up in some form in the Dark World. And is it too much to ask that we will fight a Darkner version of Birdly? I would really love to smash his beacon using Susie's axe. But moving on from that, I'm also certain that we will learn a lot more about Ezreal as a character through not only Ralsei, but also through other things that we come across in both the Darkner and Lightner worlds of Deltarune. Remember, both Ezreal and Kris gave form to the Dark World and its purpose when they entered it. There is a very real possibility that Ralsei is not even just someone that Kris has created, but he could very well be a denizen of the dark that Ezreal himself gave form to watch over his adopted sibling. My third prediction is this. Gaster is the one behind the new Dark Fountains. Oh my gosh, shocker! But no, I do not think that he is the knight, because that would just be way too straightforward for a shady character like him. Instead, I think he is the one who has empowered the knight and has begun sowing the thoughts of rebellion and doubt amongst the other Darkners. it was most likely him who told Jevil that this whole world was a game in the first place. Now, if I make a claim that Gaster, one of the most spooky and sought-after characters of the Undertale lore, is involved in some kind of way, I should take the time to make myself clear as to why I believe that he is a part of this. You see, in entry 17 of Undertale's True Lab, it reads that he is trying out a new experiment, one that is dark, darker, yet darker, one that will prove very, very interesting. And we come across similar lines throughout the game of Deltarune itself. Gaster is performing an important, dangerous experiment in the Dark World. We know that the one-time royal scientist fell into his own machine while experimenting with determination. It's extremely likely that he was meddling with determination as a way to cross time and space. As a result of his folly, he was torn apart and scattered across infinite timelines in space, and yet he is still very active. While we can only guess at what his endgame is, consider this: a mad scientist with nothing to lose and everything to gain, who has access to a world where anything that he imagines he could conceivably create, what wouldn't he do? And the world of Deltarune also makes it clear that choices don't matter because the world's destiny is set. But that runs counterintuitive to the very idea of determination, something that Gaster is obsessed with. I believe that Gaster's great experiment is to infuse determination into the Dark World, and our quest so far has been a paltry exercise to see what determination can do. Because even though we can do different things within the Dark World, the ultimate ending with King really doesn't change radically depending on what we do, and also the ending of the chapter doesn't change whatsoever. So the grand finale, the real goal of this determination experiment, what is it? Well, I think that it is Gaster's attempt to bring about an apocalyptic ending where the destiny of the world of Deltarune is really put at risk and it will all be obliterated unless something can stop it. And this is where one final moment comes in where determination could change everything. And that brings me to my final prediction for the game Deltarune and its overall story. Holding, of course, to the idea that the Dark World is indeed real, and that Gaster has set up a quest that will lead to an inevitable apocalypse. Kris, Susie, and Ralsei must travel across the town in the Dark World to shut down all of the different Dark Fountains and usher in the fall of Angel's Heaven, which I think will very likely take place inside the church, where, for one, the pastor doesn't quite like Kris, and secondly, this is also the place where the entire Dreamer family would go before Asgore and Toriel's divorce. There's a lot of meaning wrapped up in this particular place. And so the goal of all of this, what Gaster's doing, is to set up a showdown of epic proportions between two angels. The Angel of Life and the Angel of Death. Ezreal and Chara. At the end of Chapter 1, we see Kris do something very Chara-esque, and it is likely because Chara is now in the game. I believe that we would not have experienced this ending were it not for something that happens in the Dark Fountain itself. And we even get an idea that something bad is about to come up back in King's dungeon, when Kris and Ralsei have an interesting and interrupted conversation. But even before that, Kris is scared of entering the Dark World. Could it be that they feel something akin to sins crawling up their back? In some way, Chara has been allowed to enter this dimension, and it was probably due to Gaster's meddling. What is next now is to prepare Ezreal for the confrontation. We know that he is coming home soon from college, presumably at the very end of the game. Whether it be through fusing with Ralsei or by some other means, Gaster wants Ezreal to face off against his adopted sibling in the greatest showdown of determination and power any world on any of these timelines has ever seen. The two Dreamer children, who have wielded more determination than anyone besides you, the player. What a battle it will be. But we also have to consider another thing that has happened. Sans shows up in the town at the end of the game, and Sans is also a cosmic player in this game. As the defender and avenger of all monster kind in Undertale, it makes sense that he would come here. He and Gaster are linked in some mysterious way, and I think it is very, very likely that he, and soon Papyrus as well, will play a role in preparing Kris and Susie for the battles that are to come. They are trying to stop Gaster before it's too late, and the dynamic trio of heroes will be their pawns in this game. And granted, I may just be saying all this because I think it would be really awesome and hilarious to see a training montage with Sans and Papyrus. But let us consider the possibility that Chara and Ezreal will face off against one another at full strength. This is where I think we will get the emotional sucker punch at the very end, where we will be given one more chance, a la Gaster, to use our determination to sway the final battle one way or another. However, there is still a specific ending that Toby Fox has in mind. I believe that through a series of choices, we, as the players, will make a specific choice that inevitably leads to either Kris or Ezreal delivering a killing blow against the other, only to have Susie be the one who steps in to block it. There will be sacrifice, redemption, and one final show of what determination can really do in order to save the world of Deltarune. This will be Gaster's great experiment, and this will be our greatest moment of self-realization as the players. Sans will be a witness to this final battle, and he will take the picture of these three friends, Kris, Ezreal, and especially Susie with him, and written on a drawing of these three people smiling, these three friends, are the words, "Don't forget." After what Sans will see in Deltarune, he will never want to forget this. And why is that? Because the love that he will see between these three friends at the end is the self-same solution to the monster's incarceration in Undertale. As a result, whatever that ending will be in Deltarune, we as the players will realize to a greater degree the magnitude of our decisions and their impact on the world of Undertale. Because these two games, these two worlds, are not connected necessarily by events, but by themes and characters. And there is one last thing that I really wanted to point out about this possible ending, and even the ending of Chapter 1, which is the song Don't Forget. Music is very, very important, especially in this game. And it all begins with when Kris starts moving through the fields of hopes and dreams. It bears the same name as the music that accompanies our fight with Ezreal at the end of Undertale, specifically the fight that leads to the best ending for the game. And the music for the Fields of Hopes and Dreams provides the base motive for most of the music in the game. And I think it's because this is Toby Fox's own subtle way of telling us that determination and Ezreal's true identity will continue to play important roles throughout the game, especially now that we consider the lyrics to the end credits song, Don't Forget. When the light is running low and the shadows start to grow, which I believe represent Gaster's experiment and the friend's quest, and the places that you know seem like fantasy, representing the expansion of the dark world through the dark fountains. There is a light inside your soul that's still shining in the cold with the truth, the promise in our hearts. This is determination. Even though we still haven't seen it yet, with each time that you save a file, you feel like determination belongs somewhere in that funny little statement saying that you've now saved the file. Don't forget, I'm with you in the dark. While this person Kris should not forget could be a number of people, I feel strongly that it is Ezreal, the one who introduces himself as your best friend, the one who freed the monsters, the angel of life and of freedom, and the one who we see, the one in whom we see. The most drastic example of how love, mercy, and understanding can change everything. However Toby wants to spin his grand finale, I guarantee that this will be his central message. And that is how he will tie together creator, characters, and fans into one masterful epic. Alright, this video has gone on long enough, and I know it's a lot to take in, but I just really wanted to share all of my thoughts with you in this video, and I would love to hear your own theories and ideas in regards to Undertale and Deltarune. Granted, none of us will know for certain until the whole game comes out, or if we could invade Toby Fox's mind and mine for clues. In the meantime, however, please go and check out our podcast, Camille's Harem, at Podbean, iTunes, and Google Play. We also have some fun art for you to check out on our Tumblr, writing exercises free of charge on our Pinterest, and you can engage us in conversations and discussions over at our subreddits. And you can also help us in our ongoing quest to find terrible fanfics by sending us links to them via our Twitter at Camille's Harem. And until the next video, or until I fall into a monster-infested underworld, tschüss.
When the light is running low and the shadows start to grow and the places that you know seem like fantasy, there's a light inside your soul that's still shining in the cold with the truth, the promise in our hearts. Don't forget, I'm with you in the dark.